All right, now this is going to be part 4 of my Liberty University series, and I gotta admit, it really is fun going down memory lane, thinking about all the things I went through 4 years on campus as a student. There are a lot of good times, some rough times, but overall, I think the good outweighs the bad, except when I look at my student loans. But anyway, we're talking part 4, and I haven't decided yet. I did write some notes down for this video, but I haven't decided if I want to split this up into 2 parts to do like one mega video, because I have a lot to say when it comes to Liberty University in regards to relationships, marriage, ring by spring, and I feel like 2 words sum up the way Liberty dealt with quote unquote promoting relationships. Clayton King, and he was a campus pastor for quite some time when I was a student, and I'll never forget, if I'm not mistaken, it was like spiritual emphasis week where he would speak for 3 nights out of a week. He was speaking like convocation to open it up the week. Then he would do sermons, at the Vine Center throughout the week, and sometimes Thomas Road. And then he would close it out on Friday morning in convocation. And spiritual emphasis week, I mean, to be honest, at Liberty University, it felt like every week was a theme. Spiritual emphasis week, church planning month, missionary month, global emphasis week. It was just so many things. But I will say you couldn't say you were bored being at Liberty, because there was always something to be involved in. Like, heck, I remember being in like 3 different clubs during one semester and taking classes, because my thing was, I wasn't working when I was in school, so I made the best of my free time by trying, build up the resume and whatnot. So talking relationships, now I'm going to be upfront. While I was at Liberty University, and even I was never in a relationship. I had a lot of female friends, but I wasn't in any relationships with them. I think, let me just mentally think here. And I know my first date ever was during my first semester. It was a blind date, and it went okay. Me and the girl really didn't click, but we became really good friends. I mean, she got married, and even now, we're still good friends. So even though I didn't get a girlfriend out of it, I really did come out with a good friend as a result. And I think I was 18 at the time. That was my first date, and it was a blind one. And yeah, that was pretty interesting. I was nervous, like I don't know what, because I had never been on a date before. So at least I didn't trip or fall or do anything weird. So that was pretty good. Let's see. So I think, I don't even know if the other ones you can call dates. I think they're really just hanging out. Maybe I'm going to just spitball and say 3, but I don't even think it was that many. And yeah, so let me just talk about relationships in general. Clayton King, great guy. Honestly, one of my favorite pastors. I mean, this is like 2010 I'm talking about here, and it's 2018, and I still go back and look at and listen to some of his, spiritual emphasis week sermons. Like some of my favorites, like when he talked about Joseph, he did like an entire week series on Joseph. And what the real big one was, I remember for like a solid year, spring and fall semester, he did like relationships and marriage. Like that was his thing. Like he spoke a lot at campus church, and I went to a lot of them. And his main thing was just talking about those 2 subjects, relationships and marriage, for like a solid year. And what really got me was the fact that Liberty he kind of made it seem like there was something wrong with guys who were single, because it's like, guys, the ratio here is 3 girls to every guy. If you're single, I don't know what to say about you. And I'm like, well, that's not fair, because not everybody is looking for their soulmate. Some people are here just for the sake of getting a good education and going on with their life. So I felt a bit kind of targeted in a way. I felt kind of like hurt, but I still listen to the sermon now. But I just felt some kind of way about it felt like the whole brainwashing situation where I felt churched out, and I began to question my own Christianity. That made me question my own manhood, in the sense like, wait, is there something wrong with me? Maybe it's because maybe there is something wrong if I'm not dating anybody. So yeah, in some way, shape, or form, I did feel some kind of way about it. But in a way, I'm kind of glad I was single, because I know that spiritual emphasis week, there was a time where Clayton King was known as the breakup guy. Like, every time he spoke, there were like major breakups around campus, and it was ridiculous. Like, I remember like the Vine Center where he would preach. Like, anytime you walked out a spiritual emphasis week at the end of a sermon, there was always a guy and a girl sitting on like a bench under a tree or whatever. And one of them, either the guy or the girl, was looking down at the ground because they are literally being broken up with. Because Clayton King, like, he spoke truth now. Don't get me wrong. Like, he would lay down the truth about, you know, how a guy and a girl should be like spiritually, you know, linked, you know, like carrying the same yoke. I mean, that's one of the big things, you know. It is difficult, like, if you're a Christian but your significant other isn't, like they practice another religion, or they're not a believer at all, because those are the big questions. You know, things might be good now, but what about if you get married? What about if you get kids? You know, there's so many questions of like, how will you raise the child? So many different things that were brought up, and they were like, looking back at some of those sermons, like, yo, he dropped a lot of truth bombs, and I see why people felt some kind of way towards him, because at a younger age, you really don't ask yourself those kind of questions. Because my thing was, I never wanted to be in a relationship for the sake of being in a relationship, because I feel like I was trying to find my way in the world, you know, picking the right major, finding a job, paying bills, you know, eventually when I graduated. So relationships to me almost seemed like more than I could handle. And, that's how I felt about it. I mean, maybe things would have been different if I were in a relationship. Maybe that would have changed my outlook on it, because I was an extreme introvert. So maybe if I were in a relationship, that might have pushed me into being more open to doing new things, that kind of thing. Because I'm an extremely picky eater, for one. And also when it comes to like watching TV and movies, I'm very specific about what I will and won't watch. So, you know, hey, but I know that Clayton King actually wrote 2 good books that I still own today. Dying to Live, one of my favorite books of all time. I remember I got it because it was a free copy at like Campus Church or something like that, or even like during our mandatory hall meetings, he donated books. So, you know, there was like a box going around. No, I think it was after Campus Church. It was after Campus Church. He had the books, and I remember getting it. I've read it like 5 times. And I think the other book was titled, I think it was either 15 or 20. It was 15 or 20. I know the title was, you know, blank questions to ask before you get married. And I loved it because I loved it when he would either preach sermons or promote books that were for everyone. They weren't just for married people. They just weren't for people who were engaged relationships. They were for single. They were for everybody. Like, I would read those books and I'm like, dang, this is good stuff, because these are the kind of questions I'm looking forward to. Like, I never really thought about marriage. That wasn't in the cards for me. Like, I'm not saying I would never get married or ever get in a relationship. It's like, I really wasn't looking for that at all, because I knew, like, I'm trying to get my own act together, you know, so I'm not trying to, you know, tie myself down just yet. But the questions promoting in that book, it's just great stuff. It was definitely good material. But I did feel some kind of way, because it's like, yo, like, you're really you're bringing it with the whole relationship and whatnot, but I really need something else, because at the moment, you know, that's not really applying to me. What's some spiritual enrichment I can do right now to make myself a better person? But I do like the fact that there was always the aspect of, don't try to find that special someone right now, you know, work on becoming a better you, and that in turn might actually bring somebody your way. But in a way, I felt that kind of conflicted with the whole, well, hey, you know, it's 3 girls to 1 guy, so if you're not dating somebody, something's wrong with you. I felt like there was some kind of hypocrisy in that. You know, like, one minute it would be like, yo, man, something's wrong with you if you're not dating somebody, and then another sermon is like, hey, work on becoming a better you, and then maybe that will work with finding someone. And then another sermon is like, you can't just wait around and say that God's going to bring somebody your way. You got to put yourself out there. That's what's really confusing to me. So that was one thing that kind of threw me off about relationships. So yeah, overall, in terms of the school, there was a lot of relationship talk in a lot of the sermons going on, especially with Clayton King. And moving on to the next topic, there were a lot of semesters where I was depressed, because when I was at home back in my hometown public school, and then even after I graduated, before I went to college, I never really felt boggled down to being in a relationship. It never really crossed my mind that much, because I knew at that point what I wanted and what I didn't want in a girl. But with college, it really sucked, because you are surrounded by relationships. There were some days I just felt very, very down. Like, you know, if I didn't have class, I was like going to the post office to pick up a package, or going to Chick-fil-A or Sub Connection to get something to eat, or just getting on the bus. And what really made me mad is the fact that there were couples like right in front of me. Like there's a couple getting a bit cozy in front of me, and I'm thinking to myself, where's an RA when you need them to give them a rep? Because I think at the time there was like no kissing rule and like 3-second hugs and all this other bull crap. To be honest, I don't know what the rules are now, but I think they become a lot more lenient. So yeah, if you're a student now, you're a lot luckier than I was. Not that it mattered because I never got any action. So hey, it sounds a bit flimsy, but hey, it's true. Nothing happened to me. That's all I'm saying. But I just remember there were times where I would just be like, man, God, this is just punishment. What is going on here? And my thing was, I had a lot of female friends and I was very shy and reserved. And the thing was, looking now, it is kind of upsetting because I was the studious guy. I was the nerdy guy, like, always have my nose in a book studying, doing what I was supposed to do. I wasn't really outgoing. And then like the other guys on my hall who I'm still good friends with, they were the ones who were like the bulky ones, that worked out a lot and, were, all for talking to girls and stuff like that. It really kind of hurt because I can think of at least 3 crushes I had that they ended up marrying. Like they married my crushes, and that was kind of like, crap. That sucks. But I got over it. But it did kind of hurt in the moment. But I was just like, well, to be fair, I never really put myself out there. And like the girls, they were nice to me. We were talk to each other. We're still good friends. But you can kind of feel, you can kind of gauge if they were into you or if they weren't. So yeah, to be honest, that kind of did suck because I was like the underdog. I was never. And thinking about like my obviously every semester, every year, the dorm, like the majority of the people in there would change. But I think for the most part, a lot of the people were on the same dorm with me during my 3 years on the Circle, which was on main campus on 26-2. Yeah, a good portion of those guys are married now. Some of them had kids. I could be wrong, but I think I'm one of the very, very few that are not even are not married or even in a relationship. And that kind of sucks. But, yeah, whatever. I think I was in one of them's wedding. I was one of the groomsmen. And I think I went to another one's wedding. I just attended. So, yeah, it kind of does suck because it's like, man, what am I doing with my life? That kind of thing. But it really did bog me down for quite some time because it was really like going to, movie events on campus and going to church and whatnot. And I always thought it did kind of suck because don't get me wrong. After that first semester involving my questioning of my Christianity, I always thought about, I'm always going to these sermons and whatnot talking about, godly relationships. But I never had the opportunity to put that into practice, like being like a godly boyfriend and then eventually maybe a godly husband and then father. It's never really happened. So to me, it kind of like suck when you go to church and you see these couples, praying, hugging and like, praying for each other. And I'm just there like, hey, God, how's it going? So there was that. But, there are plenty of stories I have involving girls. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I sucked at talking to girls. Like my game was I had no game. I had no swag. I had nothing like that. Like I remember even now I'm like I came out of my shell in terms of being like an icebreaker when it comes to conversation, cracking jokes and whatnot, and just engaging a conversation with a girl. But my thing is I always suck at the conclusion because I always treat it like a comedy act. Like, I'll end it off on a good joke and have her laughing, but I always forget. For some reason, I always forget to get the phone number. I don't know why that is, but it's always a weakness in my strategy. I don't know. It just never really occurs to me because my thing is I don't ever really go to a location in the purpose of I'm going to the mall to find a girl or something like that. Nah, I just go to the mall if I gotta go to a store, if I want to browse. I really never leave my apartment. Like, again, I'm 26. I think I moved up here and started working at Liberty at age 22. Was it 22? Yeah, because I quit in 2017. I just turned 26, so that means 3. Yeah, I think it was like 23 or whatever. And yeah, even then, I never really went to events trying to find anybody. Now, as a student, it was kind of like, you always had your friends like, hey, man, we're going to find somebody for you. They fail. That's the thing I hated about trying to be set up by friends, because what really hurts is like when you have friends and you think they should know what you like and don't like, and they try to set you up with somebody who is completely the opposite of your type. So, and then it's like, well, don't be picky. I'm like, It's better than nothing. I'm like, well, dang, that's kind of true. But at the same time, I think that's kind of unfair because I'd rather, try to go on a date with somebody that I feel like I vibe with as opposed to just dating to date. That's just never been my, MO about it. And, that led to my story that I told in my Falwell video about the ring by spring or your money back kind of thing. And just to talk about ring by spring, I actually had a video series with a friend of mine, Chris Moore, when we were on campus. I'll even try to put a link at the end of this video. And we talked about conspiracy theories. I always thought about, if you ever watched the movie Grease, John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John, you had the T-Birds and the Pink Ladies. And it was pretty much understood that they could only date within their ranks. Like a pink lady could only date a T-Bird, and a T-Bird can only date a pink lady. And I always thought about how it was funny on Liberty's campus. You would have the brother dorm, which is obviously a guy dorm, and the sister dorm, which was a girl dorm. And remember, I said in one of my videos, I was very introverted during my first semester. I had no idea we had a sister dorm. My entire first semester, I had no idea we had that. No idea. I was only studious. That's all it was. It was going to church when I had to and doing my homework and going to class. That's all it was during my first semester. And, like I was on 26-2. I think our sister dorm at the time was like 27-2 or something like that. And we would go to the ROT, which was the like dining hall. So there was always events like at the beginning of the semester. It was like, hey, meet your sister dorm and let's sit together during convocation and go to campus church together. So to me, it felt like a business cycle. Like, here we have a brother dorm and sister dorm. We're going to have them interact with each other in different activities. And then, eventually, maybe after 1 or 2 months, that's when you'll see people kind of split off. Maybe not in terms of couples, but you might notice a certain group of girls hanging out with a certain group of guys and stuff like that. And then some relationships might form as a result. And I always thought that's kind of funny because Liberty will set these people up. Then they'll eventually graduate. Then they'll get married. Then they'll have a kid, and then send them to Liberty Christian Academy for elementary school and whatnot. Then they'll grow up and go to Liberty, have a brother or sister dorm, and then the cycle continues. I always thought, very clever, Liberty, but I'm not being swept up in your propaganda. That's not to say that I didn't have my fair share of crushes in the sister dorm, but whatever. So yeah, Liberty was pretty funny about that, looking back at it, because there were a lot of times I was depressed. My thing was, my luck with girls was never that good. Like, a lot of them I'm still friends with today, but even the ones where, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking back, have you ever thought about a relationship, or even like not even a relationship, but maybe a job opportunity or something you were dreaming or praying for? When you're about to get it, that's when it's like, you're not rushing it. I think when it comes to girls, not physically, of course, but, telling them how you feel and all that bull crap that kind of sucks because you're vulnerable. Have you ever, things have been going well for a girl, you've been talking for a few weeks and whatnot, and then for the first time you're thinking, I think I actually have a shot with her. And then for some reason, I don't know why, if it's like something in the back of my head, I end up screwing it up. Either because I jumped the gun or I start to act distant. And it's like maybe like a fear of commitment or a fear that I'm about to actually get what I want. But then at the last minute, I'm like, I have my doubts and I'm like, is this really what I wanted? And then looking back, you regret it. That's pretty much me. It's like, and even in some cases where these girls, like, I would deal with the negative aspects of relationship without even being in a relationship, like the drama, getting into arguments about stupid crap and stuff like that. So I never experienced like, oh my God, I miss you, like one of those hugs and stuff like that. I never really experienced that. So yeah, it really sucks looking at my story. Dang, it's tough. But you know what? To kind of lighten the mood, let me just tell you about one of my first experiences with girls at Liberty. I remember being at the advising office for the School of Computer Science, because I was a student in that school during my first semester. I changed to communications at the end of it. I remember sitting there, and there were these two cute girls, and we talked, I cracked some jokes. I actually was a bit witty at that time, but not full scale sarcastic and whatnot. And again, this goes back to how I suck at conversation. I suck at conversation when it comes to ending the conversation, like getting the number. And I remember leaving. This was like on the third floor of a building. I remember leaving the building, and then you know what? I wrote down my number, and I went all the way back up and gave him the number, and I never got a call. And I remember the next time I saw them in person was at a talent show, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? It's like, hey, and like, oh, I'm sorry, my phone doesn't work in Virginia because they were from California, and I'm just like. Looking back, I realized I had just got, shaded. I didn't even know it. I don't even know if shaded was like a word back then. But yeah, I suck. Like, I didn't really know. Again, I never had practice with this. Nobody ever sat down with me and told me about, how to talk with girls and stuff like that. And, obviously the key is to get their number, not, give them yours. But again, give me some credit here. I was studious. I was a bookworm. I didn't know about this stuff. So I know in the comment section below, you're probably going to light me up. But I'm just telling my story. And, yeah, that was pretty much that. And I guess after that experience, I was just like, you know what, bump this. I'm just going to focus on studies. And that's not to say a lot of crushes did not come along the way, because there were some girls like I was really feeling, but they weren't feeling me for one reason or another. That was another bad part about being an 18-year-old senior by credit, senior by credit hours, because nobody in my age range wanted to really date me, because there were girls that told me to my face, it's like, look, you're cute, you're funny, you're smart, but the fact that you're going to be graduating college soon, and the fact that I just started, it will just make it difficult. And then the girls who I was on credit range with, in terms of being seniors, like, hey, you're a bit too young for me. There was no middle ground. I always felt like the middle child, like nobody would pay attention to me due to the fact, like, I was far above my age in terms of like intelligence and credit hours. But that was intimidating to some, not all women. And it was just, it really just kind of, rubbed me the wrong way. I felt like I was either too, quote unquote, smart for my own good, or I was too young. And that was the real kicker, because at the time I realized, I was kind of into women who were a little bit older than I was, but maybe a couple of years. And yeah, that was kind of messed up. So trust and believe, the only rings I was getting by spring were from Burger King, onion rings. But, hey, it is what it is. And, man, there are just so many stories I can tell. I got a lot. I mean, it was 4 years. So, but yeah, the gist of it was, relationships were heavily promoted in the sermons. Relationships were promoted via books. Ring by Spring was a running gag. And then you had the brother and sister dorm thing going on. And, the one thing I'll take away is the fact that I made a lot of good friends, just a lot of good friends, female friends who I still talk with to this day. And I wouldn't trade that. Because that's really good stuff. And as I said in another video, college, you really do make friends for life, because those are people who have seen you at your best, people who have seen you when you're at the lowest of your low, and they help bring you back up. And those are really good times. So, yeah, I think that about covers it in terms of relationship overall. During my heyday as a student, yeah, Liberty really was for promoting relationships, and unfortunately, I was never one to obtain one. So it's 2018. I graduated from Liberty 5 times. So Jerry, President Falwell, if you're listening, I want my money back. So with that being said, hey, subscribe to the channel if you like this video. Let me know your thoughts about Liberty University in terms of their relationship dynamic as a whole. And hey, if you were a Liberty student at some point, let me know in the comments. Did you ever go out on dates? Did you ever have a relationship? Or even better, did you end up marrying your Liberty University sweetheart? And actually, before ending the video, I need to talk about this one. I actually saw a proposal. It was during finals week. I remember sitting outside of the Tower Theater bus stop. And I know right now there's no bus stop at the Tower Theater, but at the time there was. I was sitting outside. I had just come from the Tilly Center. I had gotten a sandwich from Chick-fil-A. There was a guy sitting outside of his car, and he had like a sign saying, "Will you marry me?" And he had a bunch of balloons. He was standing there. I could tell he was nervous because I think he was waiting for his girlfriend to come out of her final exam. And I was just sitting there by myself, waiting on the bus. Class had just let out. Well, the exam had just, she obviously had just finished her exam. She walked out of the door and she was just like, her jaw dropped, and she ran over to him and hugged him. They kissed, and he got on one knee, gave her the ring. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I was the only person at that location. And I remember, they got in the car, they drove off, they waved, I gave them a thumbs up, and I was like, yeah, this sucks. This was actually during one of those days where I was feeling depressed about being single, but at the moment I felt happy because it's like I was able to witness something like that. So yeah, yeah, that was a bit of a funny story because I was thinking to myself, it would have sucked if she said no, man. I know. Can you imagine, like, golly, it's like she just got out of this exam. Maybe my timing isn't good. Maybe it's the right moment, because I can't even imagine. Like, I get nervous even asking for, like, a phone number. So I can't even imagine the nerves that it takes to, ask somebody to spend the rest of their life with you, especially if they say no, because I've seen some of those, like, engagement rejection videos, and that, especially if you do it like in a public place, my gosh, that is just crushing. But yeah, overall, I've had my ups and downs at Liberty in terms of relationships because, well, I never had one. I just, yeah, whatever. So yeah, let me know your experiences in the comment section below. And Jerry Falwell, again, cut me a check, man, because I want my money back.